Hey, this is Tonya, and if you haven't heard already, Truth Be Told is Apple Podcasts Spotlight for the month of March, which means they literally put a spotlight on our work through the Apple Podcast platform. We're honored to have been chosen, and if you're new here, welcome. We like to call ourselves that one friend you text or call after a long day, the one who gets you. Every Thursday, we have soul-nourishing conversations that make you think, make you feel, and maybe inspire you to take action in your own life. We're taking on what liberation looks and feels like for Black Americans, and this season, we're focused on how to decolonize our expressions of love and desire. Please subscribe so you don't miss a minute, and share your thoughts by giving us a review. And thank you for choosing Truth Be Told. They say 4 a.m. is the most productive hour of the day.
All right, it is 4:15. I have just gotten out of bed, getting this coffee going. Time to make the donuts.
I've been buying into that myth for most of my career. If I had to be at work by 9, I'd be there by 8, sitting at my desk, computer open, working the phones as a journalist. And before I even stepped into the office, I was spending those ungodly hours scouring the headlines, prepping for the day, working to prepare for work. Time off? Never heard of it. There's always an email or a phone call to respond to. I've actually felt guilty sometimes for sleeping. Booked and busy. That's how we glorify this kind of existence. Can you even get through a conversation with somebody these days without this kind of virtue signaling? We like to call it work ethic. But really, if I'm honest with myself, it's about proving my worth.
I tell people all the time, when you feel guilt and shame about resting, to use it as evidence that you've been brainwashed, to use it as beautiful knowledge and insight that you are part of a system that has taught you this since you were born.
That's Tricia Hersey, founder of the Nap Ministry. And if you follow her work on Instagram, you already know her posts are loud. This one is my favorite. Stop worrying about productivity. You don't even know what that is. Tricia's work centers on a very simple but profound idea. You can't really be free if you're bound by hustle culture. On this episode of Truth Be Told, we are exploring how to treat our bodies, not as hustle machines, but as living divine beings that need to rest. And what does that even look like? Stay with us. The idea for the Nap Ministry came to Tricia Hersey back in 2013 when she was in divinity school. A lot of things were coming up for her all at once. The news was dominated with stories about police brutality, and Tricia was sitting in predominantly white classrooms, yet again in the position of proving her worth as a Black woman in America. She was exhausted. So many of us hustle because we've internalized this idea that we have to be twice as good to go half as far. And that in so many instances, we are one decision, one bad meeting, or performance away from being yesterday's news. Tricia knew she didn't want to live like this anymore. While in divinity school, she started researching Black liberation theology and created the Nap Ministry, which offers a bunch of really cool experiences like community naps in public places like parks and art galleries, and workshops to help people explore ways they can resist hustle culture and lean into the liberating power of rest. Tricia Hersey and I caught up with each other to talk more about this work.
Well, Tricia, we're having this conversation with you off camera, and that is intentional. Tell us why.
Yeah. I have Zoom fatigue. I feel like it needs to be named more. Since the pandemic, everything has switched and went over to this virtual land and virtual space. And it's been important and a saving grace for many people to stay connected this way, for us to continue on, with our programs, for things to kind of keep moving in that way. But at the same time, the technology and what happens when we're online all the time, the things that are neurologically happen to our brain, the media, screen time that we're on, the blue light, the constant connection to something outside of ourselves, it's leading us down to the path of exhaustion.
It is exhausting, Tricia. My goodness. I mean, and I don't think, as you said, we really take weight and take stock of the fact that there is an energy thing that's happening. There's a zapping of energy from the technology.
Everyone is feeling this way, but everyone's just keep going on. Like this idea of like, this is just what it is. But I feel like more people need to name the fact that they're exhausted. Every time someone wants to do something with me virtually or do something on Zoom, I'm always just like, can we do a regular call? And they're always like, oh my gosh, thank you for saying that. I didn't know I could have said that. Like, I thought we had to do it this way. I'm like, no, regular calls have been taking care of business for centuries. That's to me the beginning of a resistance and this pushback and this disruption that I talk about with rest being.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, you're also giving us permission. I'm thinking about your email auto response that states you're prioritizing rest over responding. I'm just thinking, if I got that from anybody else, it actually says to me, wait a minute, I want to take rest too. I don't need to respond to this either.
Yes.
You're conveying that to people, but what are some of the responses you get from folks when they see that?
People ignore it. Most people are like, okay, that's good and everything. And they just respond back, I saw your message, but. So I do think that part of this work is living it and embodying it. Like I'm really living this work. It's not just some social media project for me. If you say you want to resist the systems that are treating you like a human machine, then part of that is going to have to be making decisions, being intentional, being extremely connected to what your body really needs and wants.
We're going to get into the practice of how to do that because I think that the majority of people agree with you. Like we're on a treadmill that we want to get off of. But let's first start with the very basic foundation of your assertion, and that is that sleep deprivation is a social justice issue. How so?
Absolutely. Sleep deprivation for Black people specifically traces itself back to the plantation. And so I think we can't really talk about this movement of rest is resistance the way I'm uplifting the movement without speaking about what has been. This is an historical perspective, a lens that lends itself towards looking at what has been done to our bodies as a part of being in this system. What have our ancestors toiled? What did labor look like? And how that same machine level pace of labor that was experimented on our ancestors' bodies on plantations, the same machine that's driving capitalism and grind culture today. And so when I say that, the idea of resisting a system that says you are a part of the cog in this wheel, your body doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the clock, you don't have sovereignty to make decisions, your body isn't yours, your body also is not worth anything unless it's producing, creating, and on the wheel of production. And so to resist that, to disrupt that and say, that's not true, that's a lie, I'm divine, I can rest is my natural state, it is my birthright. To disrupt that and push back is the social justice piece of it. It is pushing back against very violent systems. And so I think a lot of people think, oh, this is just lay down because you're tired. But to really lay down and to intentionally rest in a system that wants you going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that is built upon the backs of our ancestors, it's a resistance to stop and say, no, I'm going to lay down. I'm going to uplift my body. I'm going to connect with it. I'm going to listen to my body and not continue to be pushed into a machine level pace. The pace that we're living on is not sustainable. It just isn't. That's why so many people claim burnout. That's why so many people say they're exhausted. That's why so many people are not well mentally or physically. It's because this pace that they have created is not sustainable for a human being to live on. And so to push back is the resistance, is the justice piece of it.
On the other side of that coin is the stereotype that we as Black people also experience and live with, and that is that we're lazy. So it's really interesting. Like the one side of it is, right, we were brought here as labor and our worth is dependent on how much we can create. But then the other side of it is like, by resisting that is the narrative that we're lazy.
Yeah, we were being called lazy when we weren't working on plantations for 20 hours a day too. And so I don't think we understand that the concept of laziness, the concept of productivity, all these things that we're using to like be a marker for how much we do, really were taught to us by the people who are creating the system. And so this is the oppressor's language. Like, I don't use the word lazy in any of our work. I believe laziness is a myth in the language of the oppressor. A Black person cannot be lazy in a culture in which they still owe a debt to our ancestors. They still owe a debt to our ancestors for creating this entire country. And for a Black person to say that they're lazy in a system that we're literally running on our backs. I really want people to begin to flip things and to begin to study and understand what you've been taught. Everything you've been taught has been a lie about rest and labor. It's all been a part of your brainwashing. I name being born in this culture as a part of being brainwashed to believe that you're not worth anything unless you're doing. People feel guilt and shame for literally listening to their bodies. Like, how sick is that? Like, I really to sit with that for a little bit. We really got to be like, that is so sick. Like,
right. But see, like, that's why what you're saying is a mind trip for many of us, because our worth is built on what we can produce. I mean, an example of this is just this past Saturday. I laid down on the couch for a little bit and told my family I'm going to close my eyes just for a little bit. And I woke up 5 hours later to the sun setting. My body was demanding that rest, but I also felt a lot of guilt about it. I bet you hear that often, people feeling guilty about resting and taking that beat.
One of my favorite scholars, rest in peace to Bell Hooks, she said that the biggest, trick of a white supremacist capitalist patriarchal system is guilt and shame. Once they can have you feeling guilt and shame about anything you do, that's where they have you. That's really true oppression. That's true, like, that is the opposite of liberation. And so if you feel guilty and shame while you're resting, rest through it, sleep through it, nap through it, and know that on the other side of that is really what's true. Is really that you need rest to be able to survive and live, and it is your birthright.
Well, how does one get to that reimagination while also participating in capitalism in order to survive?
You find ways, like my grandmother, Ora Caston, who was a refugee of Jim Crow terror, leaving Mississippi, like millions of people who were leaving during the Great Migration from the South and going to the North. They imagined a new world. They imagined what they could not see. And while she was doing that, she rested every single day. She rested for 30 minutes on the couch with her eyes closed. I often wonder, what was she doing for that 30 minutes to an hour with her work uniform on, about to go to her next job? She said she was listening to what God wanted to tell her. She would just say, I'm listening. And I'd be like, what is she listening to? You don't know what the information she was getting that was allowing her to go on and raise 9 children in a world that wanted them all dead. And so to watch her do that is such a spiritual practice and such a beautiful thing for her to tap into. She found space to rest. And so if we can begin to tap back into the rest practices that our ancestors were doing, tap back into what we know to be true about who we are, resting is the foundation for a liberated world. Without it, we're going to just get more exhaustion. And so you do that by slowly finding ways to reimagine. You don't answer an email immediately. You detox off social media every week. You find ways to find healthy boundaries in your life. You get healing, for if that may be through therapy, through prayer, through journaling, but you find a way to be able to say no to people. This world will eat you alive if you don't have healthy boundaries, if you don't have these ideas of what you want for your world. I tell people, you can also take long showers, sit in a tub every day, drink tea, daydream, sit and stare out of a window, go for a walk. There's so many active ways to participate in rest. Resting is anything that slows your body down enough so that you can connect with your body and mind.
As you're talking, Tricia, I'm also just really thinking about this article that I read by Arthur C. Brooks called The Satisfaction Trap. Essentially, he's asserting that no matter what we achieve or attain, our biology always leaves us wanting more.
If you inherently believe that you are enough simply because you are born, that you are divine simply because you are born, that your worth is not connected to anything on the outside, that's why this is a spiritual practice, then I don't think there's this idea of always going to be wanting more. I don't believe that you're going to always be wanting more once you slow down and once you begin to see who you truly are. This work is decolonized, and it's letting people look at themselves for who they truly are. Divine human beings worthy of rest, period. There's no other reason for us to be resting except because it's part of who we are. It's part of our right as human beings. And so to keep attaching this idea of rest to it having to be something more, to I'm doing this so I can be more productive. I'm doing this because I'm burnt out. I'm doing this so that you're simply resting just to be, because you can just be. This idea of leisure, this idea of not having to do another thing. Black people have never been able to participate in that. We've never been able to participate in leisure. We've never been able to participate in the idea of just being. Even when we have a job, we're thinking, well, I got some extra free time. Maybe I'll get 2 extra jobs. Maybe I'll get a side hustle. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do that. Even when we're like not needing to work, we're always like trying to find something else to do. I have to be doing something. And to me, that is the ultimate trick and the ultimate evidence of our brainwashing. You can just be. You can just sit and be. And that's totally all that you have to do.
You know, I'm thinking about the individual versus the collective. Like for this thing that you're talking about to truly work, doesn't it require that just about everyone buy into it? I'm just thinking on a very practical level with something as small as saying, I'm not going to participate on Zoom meetings, or I'm going to change my handle to say I'm not responding to every email request. But then the world is responding to every email request and everyone's on Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
So then how can you participate while still setting those boundaries? Does it need to be a collective, like, call out where everyone is saying we're doing it for this to truly work?
There will never be everyone collectively on the same page toward liberation in this country, just because we're not the same. There's not a monolith of people who actually even buy into this. And so that is fine, and I'm okay with that, because I understand that for everyone to get free, that we're going to have to really be working within the individual and the collective. And so, no, I don't think that everyone needs to be on this for us to be able to find these temporary spaces of joy and freedom. For Black people to be able to live and thrive and survive in a culture like the one that we live in, we would be dead by now if we thought that way, because it's like, who in this world and what culture is going to give that to us, specifically to Black people? So that's why I love the idea of subversion and of being inventive and being a trickster and being flexible and imagining a new world and creating a temporary space of joy and freedom for yourself, for your community, for your family. You change the world by changing yourself and your family. If just the people around you could be on this, if just a person could be thinking to themselves, you know what, today I really don't feel like I want to go to work today, and I do have PTO. Why don't I take it? Like, those small little moments of freedom and joy is how Black people have survived this entire culture since we landed here on slave ships. And so I look up to that, and I uplift it, and I illuminate the idea of being able to work within a system, to know that I am of this world, but this world doesn't have me, that I can be a part of this and live in this world. And at the same time, I can subvert, and I can have a counter narrative that doesn't look like what the dominant culture is saying.
I'm wondering if you're seeing something that I'm seeing. I see that Gen Zers, this younger generation, by and large, they're really able to articulate this that you're talking about and set these boundaries for themselves. And it's causing a real rift within organizations, because you've got the older generation is like, I had to hustle, I had to work hard, work 12-hour days, you should too. And they're like, no, it's 5:00 and I'm setting boundaries. I mean, does that give you hope?
I love that. It does give me hope. The young people give me hope. Like, the children and the young people are really the muse of this work, because they are the ones who are going to lead us. And I just look at all the ways in which they're like breaking down and deconstructing everything, gender and how they work and money and how they live and all of these things. They're like not just taking what is given to them. And so I've always loved young people and looked at them as kind of the ones who are going to lead us and be a muse for this work, be a muse for justice and liberation. And so it does make me hopeful that they are actually pushing back and saying, no, I don't think so, or that's not going to happen. And I think that the people who are of an older generation have to begin to start seeing that as a beautiful thing and to begin to understand that if we want true liberation, we're going to have to see each generation get better.
Getting back to rest as a social justice issue, what you were saying about that makes me think about Black Lives Matter founder Patrisse Cullors. As you know, in the thick of the last few years, she has said she felt like she was literally going to die either at the hands of a white supremacist or herself. And she had to step away from this organization she created in order to save her life. It just had me thinking about how we lost so many civil rights leaders and activists who carry this weight of the movement on their shoulders. How can we carry while also lightening the load for each other and ourselves?
I think for so many people, they did not realize that this is the life they were living. They did not realize that the life that they were living was not normal. It's not normal to be working 80-hour weeks. It's just not normal. Like the pace that which we are living under, everyone has thought that that's just what it is. And so for this even small sense of awareness that what's happening when I'm feeling burnt out is actually trauma in my body showing up. No one has kind of uplifted it in that way. They've just been like, girl, it's just burnout, just take a day off and get back to it. No one has taught us that the pace in which we are living, the way that we are pushing our bodies to these extremes, not listening to our bodies, disconnecting from our body is violent and abusive. Like we just have not been told that. And so I think the small bit of awareness that people are able to have from listening and understanding what rest is just the beginning of a real movement taking off. And so when I think about Patrisse taking the time off until she can save her own life, I always wonder to people, part of being an abolitionist and being a movement worker and an activist is being alive. Like you can't do anything if you're dead. And so when I tell people like, so you're just going to keep continuing working, ignoring your body, ignoring your health, your mental health, your physical health. And so when someone finally takes a nap at one of our events, or they lay down, or they read a sentence about being like, you know what, you can rest. No one has ever told anyone, you know what, you can rest. Now, so many people have told me that, like, you're the first person to tell me it's okay to take a nap. Most people tell me that they don't think they're worthy of rest. I've had thousands of people tell me, I don't feel like I deserve it. What system has taught us that we as human beings aren't deserving of something that is a main foundation to our life? Like how manipulative and hurtful that is. And looking at this as community care, as a deep, deep, meticulous love of each other and love of community, to say stop, to really just give ourselves more grace and to have a pace that feels more aligned with what we want. And so that's going to take slowing down. It's going to take a lot of vulnerability, a lot of softness, a lot of listening, and all of the things that we've been taught not to do by this culture, we're going to have to slowly dismantle from them to be able to like build a new way.
You're also a theologian. What role does faith play for you in understanding the need for rest?
Yeah, it's a big one. When you think about the ultimate idea of faith, it's this idea that no matter what, I'll be cared for, no matter what, I'll be taken care of, that there is something higher than me, that I can't do it all and I don't want to do it all, to tell me that I have to push and go. My faith has taught me that you are cared for, that everything will be cared for because you are my child, that there is faith and there's leaping and there's this radical idea that at the end of the day, nothing can be taken from me and that I have everything I need right now. And so I really believe that looking at the idea of rest being a spiritual practice allows us to really tap into this information, this knowledge. I believe that there's knowledge, information, a dream space waiting for us. So for me, faith and being a theologian helps to ground around the work, the more we can tap into that space of listening to silence, to understanding who we truly are and what we are, I think that's going to be what moves this movement forward.
Yes, Grandma Aura, I'm going to be resting my eyes later today. Just sitting, closing my
Yes,
eyes, put that cell phone across the table and like take a moment.
Just listen. Yes, I love that.
Tricia, thank you for this conversation. My goodness, everything you say just leads me closer to being able to get to that place that you're talking about. It's an honor to be able to have you as part of this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.
This is our final episode of this season on love and liberation. And I have learned so much over the last 2 months. And I'm reflecting on that big question we had at the start. Are we our ancestors' wildest dreams? What does it take to get us there? As I'm learning, part of fulfilling those dreams means giving myself grace and the ability to rest. My worth is not wrapped up in how much I can do. But I'm going to tell you, believing that is a work in progress. But I'm getting there because, as Tricia said, resting is our birthright. We've explored so much, from the heaviness of the word bitch to releasing the notion of duty-bound sex to allowing our kids to be kids. So to wrap up this season, our fabulous team got together to highlight some of the most resonant lessons. And our admin, Rochelle, who recently lost her mother to brain cancer, was comforted by the words of poet Nikki Giovanni from our very first episode on unwavering love. If you haven't listened, you should definitely check it out. Nikki talked about the ways to comfort each other after loss.
It's not going to be all right. And if there's anything you hate in the world, is that you're going through something incredibly painful, like losing your mother, your father, or for that matter, your dog. And somebody calls and say, oh, you'll get over it. No, damn it, you won't. It will not be all right. It will be something that's always with you. So anybody who loves you is just going to say, well, I love you. I'm here. I love you. And let it go. If they drink, which I always recommend champagne, then you'll go and take a good bottle of champagne, none of that cheap crap. And you'll take a good bottle and you'll open it up and sit down. And you got nothing to say because there's nothing to say. But you're there.
That moment in that episode and being present for the recording really hit different. Hearing one of my favorites speak so simply and honestly about that time, a time that I knew was coming for me, was comforting. And secretly, I'd go back and listen to it over and over again. My mom passed, and at her service, one of my friends came up to me and said, I heard on a podcast that you don't say anything. You just bring a bottle of champagne and tell them that I love you. And she handed me a bottle and said, I love you. And that beauty, that simplicity in that moment just really meant so much to me.
Our editor for this season, James, was taken by the wise words of Ayanna Brown, a mother from Seattle who lost her 12-year-old son to gun violence. James was struck by her show of perseverance.
Right, you have on a tiara, which I'm sorry I did not acknowledge until now, but you were wearing a tiara in the Target parking lot in the car.
With a t-shirt and jeans and some slides.
With a t-shirt that says, force, a verb, a healed Black woman.
This is who I'm becoming. I actually was telling my husband, I think I need to upgrade to a crown.
A full crown. And what is that saying to the world as you walk through with your full crown or your tiara?
I am a majestic and a royal being. And I don't have to live in a palace to be considered as such. I am that because I say I am that. And that's how I feel. And that's how I'm carrying myself today. Now tomorrow, I might go back to being ratchet and, but right now, this is who I am.
Hearing that demonstration of perseverance reminded me a lot of when you're on an airplane And, you can't help anyone else until you put on your own mask first. And it reminded me that a firm love of self is the thing that can essentially catalyst pure perseverance. Like once you have like yourself set up, then you can then help out others.
And sex educator Erica Hart and her partner Ebony Donley joined us for our episode on honesty. And our social media producer Adama walked away thinking about her past relationships and this idea of ownership.
I remember saying something to Erica like, I have to belong to me, because in so many of my other relationships, I belonged to them, or I felt like I did, or I needed to belong to somebody because me on my own, I didn't feel like enough. And I think two people being autonomous and everybody belonging to themselves is not antithetical to collaboration. It's not anti-community. It is very, very, it works well in partnership. Like when you realize that your partner or whoever you want to be with or date or whatever doesn't belong to you and you don't belong to them.
Hearing that made me think about releasing the pressure and knowing that we can both independently be coming into the relationship without having to lose ourselves, and really gave me confidence in feeling I can still be independent of me. I can still be me while still choosing to be within this partnership.
Oh my God, there were so many takeaways this season. I want to know your favorite moments. What are you taking away from the season of love? Give us a call at 424-279-8475 or email me at Tonya@DearTBT.com. You can also use the hashtag DearTBT on Twitter or Instagram, all one word. All right, you ready for the next season? It's coming up in just a few weeks, and nourishment is the topic we're taking on. Food, it intimately connects us. It gives us the fullest picture of what we are truly made of. But can you get as close to who you're meant to be if you're not connected to all that nourishes? We're going to go deep, and we want to hear from you. Tell us what's on your mind, and thank you for joining us on this journey. Truth Be Told is a production of TMI Productions, and this season was produced by Ayana Angel, Aisha Brown, James T. Green, and Enrico Benjamin, and in association with Molten Heart and Fearless Media. Special thanks to Brittany Luce, Sam Rafelson, Rochelle Roberts, Adama Imeson, and B.A. Parker. Our theme music is Rest by Otis McDonald and Zora's Moon by Candace Hoyes, and we're funded in part by the Heising Simons Foundation and the Ford Foundation. I'm Tonya Mosley, and we will see you in a few short weeks.